So we're going to be looking at histograms, but to the harder style questions. Before we go on to the harder style questions, there's a few things that we've got to remember about histograms. Is that when we have histograms, the area inside the bar for each in a histogram represents the frequency. It's proportional to the frequency. So this area that we have inside this particular bar is proportional to the frequency. That's really important to understand. And that's how we tackle these harder style questions. If you remember, what we have on the axis, on the y-axis is frequency density, and frequency density is found by doing frequency divided by class width. And so if we were to rearrange that for frequency, that would be frequency density times class width, which essentially gives us frequency density, which is that vertical axis, times class width, which is that horizontal part. So that essentially gives us that same thing. It gives us the area. So the frequency is found by doing frequency density times class width, i.e. the area of the bar. So keep that in mind when we're tackling questions like this. It's really working on the idea that area is proportional to frequency. As you can see, we don't have any scale given to us on the frequency density axis. So we can't just go and times the frequency density by the width in order to find out what that frequency is straight away. But what we'll use more here is the fact that the area is proportional to the frequency. So let's go and take a look at and make a start on the question. It starts off by saying the histogram gives information about the area of 285 farms, about the areas of 285 farms. So that basically means that the frequency, the total frequency that we have here is equal to 285. Now that's really important. So if the total frequency is 285, we can say that 285 is proportional to, or can be represented by, the total area is equal to the total area of the bars. So that's really important. So what this enables us to do is start the process of multiplicative reasoning. So let's go and find out what the total area is for the bars. I know we don't have any scale on the frequency density, but we can work it out in terms of how many of these little squares that we have. Obviously, we're not going to be there counting every single square, but we can simply multiply the squares along the vertical axis by that along the horizontal axis to actually find out what the area is each square. So I'm going to look at each bar individually to find out what its area is. Okay, so let's go and take a look at the first bar. So we can see here that we've got 10, 20, 30, 35 along the y-axis, 35 little squares, so 35 times, and along horizontally we've got 15. Okay, so 35 times 15, that gives me 525. So I'm going to go and do that for each bar. For the next bar, I've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 49. So I'll just make a note here, 49 multiplied by, I've got 5. Okay, so then I can type that in and I can get the answer for that. That's equal to 245 over those little squares. And I'll work out all of them like this. So the next one is 10, 20, 28 times 10, which is 280. And the next one is 10, 20, 25 times 10, which is equal to 250. And the last bar that we have is 5 along the vertical axis times by 10, 20, 25, which is equal to 125. So now I have the total of the area in terms of those little squares. So I'm going to go and write that down. I'm going to write down that 285 farms. Okay, always write the unit so we know what we're dealing with. 285 farms is equal to a total of 525, 245, 280, 250, and 125. So if we add those together, 525, add 245, add 280, add 250, add 125, that equals 1425. So I can say that's equal to 1425 little squares. So that's all from that first sentence, line by line. Take that, I've done that bit here. Then it goes on to say work out an estimate for the number of these farms with an area greater than 38 hectares. But look, area in hectares, we're looking for the number of farms with an area greater than 38 hectares. So 38 hectares is there, 38. So I'm looking at, let me just draw a vertical line at 38. So essentially I'm looking at everything to the right of this. So if I was to highlight everything to the right of this, I'd be looking at all of this area from that vertical line that I drew. So that bar and that bar, we're interested in all of that. So how many farms are there? Well, in order to work out how many farms are there, let's work out how many little squares I have there. So I know I've got 250 and 125 in the last two bars, and I'll work out this little part bar, this bit here that I've got for this little tiny bit. It's 2 in width, and vertically it's 20, 25, 28. So 2 times 28. So we have 56 there, 56 squares. So in total, the yellow region, which is the area greater than 38 hectares, how many of those squares do I have? I have 56 plus 250 plus 125. 56 plus 250 plus 125. And that gets us 431 squares. So I'll go back to where I've set up my multiplicative reasoning here, so I can go and write down 431 squares here. And I want to figure out how I go from this number to that number, and I do the same on the other side. So what I'll do is I'll do 1425 divided by 431, and that gives us 3.306. So divide by 3.306 gets us to this number. So I'll do the same on the other side. Divide by 3.306. And then 285 divided by that number gets us to 86.2 farms. So we can then say that 431 squares, i.e. the yellow highlighted section, is equivalent to 86.2 farms. And let's make sure we answer the question. It says work out an estimate. Now this is an estimate. 86.2 farms, will round that then to 86 farms. 86 farms is our final answer. Okay, so we used multiplicative reasoning as a skill to solve the problem by saying that the area is proportional to the frequency. So these are the harder type questions that we get for histograms.